Another positive perspective video, and this one's on the business park, also called Business Park North along Whitehall Road. And a lot of people have been wondering, I've been wondering, why there's a business park that's been sitting empty that looks like it was partially developed and then nothing ever happened with it. And I assumed it was something like a developer started a project, started to do something, and then it didn't work out, their money ran out, whatever it may be, and then it never ended up being completed. And obviously it's a bit different than that because the land was owned by the county at various times in the past. That had been a chemical company, the Ott Chemical Company, the Story Chemical Company, the Cordova Chemical Company. So one of the major pollution sites in Dalton, one of three, I would say, that are an ongoing concern. And the county ended up owning it. And it was one of those issues where the government has erected so many barriers to their grand plans that they're not actually real, right? They're just kind of a fantasy type of thing. And so maybe they look good on paper, maybe, right? But they don't actually do much in the world. And then I think it's a decent part of, like, no one's willing to go and say that, hey, some issues were made, some assumptions didn't quite work out. Like in business, you have that natural corrective mechanism. Like, hey, we tried a thing, it didn't work out, we're broke. Sorry. In government, you can't really do that, right? Then they're like, well, we'll borrow some more money, we'll raise taxes, we'll print some more money, whatever the option may be. It's not like, oh, we just went broke. We'll get a bailout from a larger government, something like that. And so when you have the government doing business type of things like this, like development on spec, right? They're doing this on speculation, it can end up just muddled and sit there forever. And so when I came in office, the county still owned that land. At various points in the past, they were asking a lot of money for that acreage, 30, 40 grand an acre, I'd heard at one point in the past. Obviously, huge barrier there because you have a 400-page list of things that you can't do on the property. It's only for light industrial use. You can't set up housing, you can't set up apartments and these types of things because of it being an old chemical site that is still monitored, right? It moved from the EPA at the federal level to Eagle, now monitors it at the state level, and they contract that out. And I've met the guys that go out there and do the inspections at the various wells, and so that is actively done on the site, and the water is being processed there. And the bike trail goes through part of there. And so in 2002, that was set up with a 425 agreement between Dalton Township and the city of Muskegon. That was a 50-year contract, and there were apparently Renaissance tax credits available at the time, and so people could get a tax break in some version if a business went in there. But that agreement said that if you went into the business park, you would have to pay city taxes because the tax zone credits were for the city of Muskegon. You'd have to pay city taxes at their millage rate, right, which is significantly above Dalton's. Dalton is, I should know this offhand, but it's 2-3 mils currently, right? I think it's 2 something. Total, it's very low. And so you'd have to pay what the city is, which is significantly higher. Plus, if you had employees working in a warehouse that you set up or something like this, you would have to pay city income tax on that. And so that erected a major barrier. And obviously, that type of incentive wasn't enough to break through the other barriers. It ended up being more of another barrier. And so when I come in, I started looking at that and chopping through some of those barriers, because it shouldn't be that the government supports business or makes business happen. What it should be is that the government gets out of the way of business happening, right? I mean, that's the 2 ways that the government can kill the economy are to mess up the money supply in some version. Usually that's through taxation, but they can just flood the economy with money to devalue the currency and collapse the economy that way. It's currently what we're doing. The other way that the government can drive businesses broke, which is extremely common, is through different types of regulation. Which there are some very important. That's actually a great example of, you're polluting the land, you're polluting the water supply, you're polluting the air, and then you get away with that without paying damages to the people that it's hurt, or very minor damages. And so then the taxpayers pick up the bill on that for remediation. That is not a good system. Should work better as far as that goes, and then a bunch of the other regulations that we have shouldn't exist, or should be a lot lighter in some fashion. And so you have all of these issues with it, and some of them we can't remove. We can't make it so there aren't restrictions on the property. There should be restrictions for use on the property. But we could break the 425 agreement, and now we broke that 30 years early. We broke that contract 30 years early with the city. And to do that, I worked with the county, and I was going to have to work with the county anyways to actually sell the pieces of property for a significantly lower price. And I believe all the pieces in phase 2, which is that more northern part where the roads are in there, Agard and Industrial Way and Hine, those I believe are all sold now for $5 to $8 an acre right in there somewhere, and places have already built and are using it, which is great. In 2008, the county had actually paid $2 million for some of the infrastructure in there to pave those roads and take care of them to the parameters set by the road commission. And it's set up as a condo type of ownership, right? We think of condos as apartment buildings where you own your apartment. But really, it's a type of ownership that's more flexible, and you can have it on just pieces of land as well. And so it's set up like that. Up to this point in time, all of the people that sit on that board have been county employees, and they don't actually meet or do anything because the county's just holding it, waiting for something to happen. And it appears that when they put in those roads and paid $2 million, that they expected those places to sell off for this, this big plan of this industrial park, and that they would make their money back by charging these high amounts on that, and then the road commission would add those to the list. And now, what I was able to do is negotiate with the county and the city, break the 425 agreement 30 years early. So if you go into the business park, you're paying Dalton Township taxes, which are significantly less. And I mean, it was an issue anyways, because Dalton has to cover the zoning, Dalton Fire Department has to cover that area, so it's weird to rope the city into it, and I think that was part of a grand plan at one time. And then convince the county commissioners to sell this off for reasonable amounts of money. And they were willing to. I talked to them about it and went to the meeting where they've approved, multiple meetings where they've approved these sales. And I went to them at first to make sure those were going to go through. And really the only barrier that we weren't able to get through was the one with the road commission picking up the roads for maintenance. And that's, it's a disconnect in the county, because the county had paid millions of dollars to get the infrastructure put in and had made it to those parameters. But because it sat for so long, there was such a delay because of these other barriers, the 425 agreement, the high cost on the land, that it wasn't able to be added in some sort of reasonable amount of time, right? And it took over a decade after that money was put in, a ways over a decade, after that money was put in before anything sold. And so there ended up being a disconnect between the county and the road commission on that. And did check into it, did try to get them to approve that. But nevertheless, it's one of these things where the land is just sitting fallow. It's been able to be sold for 20 years, right? 2 decades. It's just been sitting there empty, technically able to be sold, but nothing happening with it. And that's just because the government was holding it back. I had certain things in place that were stopping people from moving forward, because the initiative has to come from individuals, right? I mean, that's almost the definition of an entrepreneur, is someone that takes risk to organize an enterprise, right? And so you have to allow them to be able to organize that. You have to allow them to be able to calculate a reasonable risk. And if you put up too many barriers, it's really easy to crush that type of initiative. Now, it's resilient, right? The human soul, the human spirit, meaning in life, there's a lot of resilience in that and what it means to be human. But still, even if there's an opportunity somewhere else, then that's where it's going to go. And so by chopping through those barriers, that's why we see things happening in the business park now, because it's not necessarily ideal. There's still those restrictions, there's still concerns about it. The road commission didn't pick up the maintenance on the roads like I was expecting and hoping, and tried to make happen. But we are able to get it to the point where someone could do something, right? To have the government stop standing in the way. And in this case, it was three, right? It's the township, the city, and the county. And once you have that many layers, it ends up being difficult. Well, and the county in multiple different ways. And so that is obviously a very positive thing, and difficult, right? Difficult to problem solve, because I had to have some people in the county, several people in the county that were willing to work with me, right? I had to be able to work with the city. I had to be able to work with multiple entities to make it happen, right? These stakeholders, that's one of the big terms now, to get all the stakeholders on board and moving in the same direction, which is basically the definition of leadership. Is very hard to do, to organize that thing. But when you are able to do it, like in this case, we're able to make some things happen and stop holding back different types of development, stop holding back people from achieving their value that they can add to society. So definitely a major positive with the business park moving forward. And there's several things like that where I'm trying to cut things out of the way, right? And, I got a list of positive things going and hoping to do a number of other positive things that aren't yet accomplished and aren't on the list over the next 2 years. And that is a pretty good example of how it's complex, but how it can occur and how progress can be made. So anything else, good, bad, or indifferent, let me know. Supervisor@DaltonTownship.org is my email. Direct line at the office is area code 231-332-6700. Until next time, this is Jeff, signing off.